How do you say something to a family member that's living together or in a sexual relationship before marriage? It is true, the world has lied to us about kicking the tires or test driving the car, shacking up before the commitment of marriage. And not just biblically, but even statistically, it is proven that folks who live together before marriage, they're less likely to make it in marriage. It's interesting. Now, through a biblical lens, there's some very important considerations I want you to look at. And I would actually turn you to Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 1, this very famous passage about judging others. And it's not just verse 1, don't judge, judge not that you be not judged. There's so much more to the passage than that, okay? I would challenge you to read this and have these considerations. First off, would you consider, are you holding a non-Christian to Christian standards? You see, that's what verse 6 means whenever it talks about throwing your pearls before swine. You're taking something valuable and giving it to someone who doesn't know how to appreciate it, doesn't understand what it is. You see, I expect sinners to sin. It's their job to do that. The thing is, if this person that you're concerned about is not a believer, the thing they need is the gospel. They need salvation before they need behavior modification, okay? And then secondly, based on this passage, you need to look inward and consider, do you need to repent of sexual immorality yourself before you approach them? You see, verses 2 through 5 are all about you and I, the reader. It tells us to evaluate ourselves and repent before we go to somebody else. That's the whole thing about pulling the plank out of your eye before you notice the speck in someone else's. So how embarrassing would it be if you went to that guy or that lady to talk to them about shacking up, but they pointed out about you, well, yeah, aren't you addicted to pornography? You see, we need to purge that sin from our lives first before we go and notice a problem in someone else's life. You see, this was King David's problem back in 2 Samuel. Whenever Nathan the prophet went to him and approached him about his sin problem with Bathsheba, he gave him that parable about the rich man who stole a sheep from a poor man. And David was outraged by this and talked about how he needed to be punished. And Nathan was like, really, bro? Because you're the one I'm talking about here. It's so easy to judge others without ever judging yourself first, okay? So that's a huge consideration right there. But then number 3, can you both biblically and lovingly approach a Christian with the truth? Don't be guilty of what Paul warns about in 1 Corinthians 13 about being a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. You see, you can have a lot of truth in your mouth, but if it's not motivated by love in your heart for that person, they're not going to want to listen to what you say. So here are some passages that I think are important if you can lovingly point that out to them, okay? And then you got to think, what is the goal in all of this? Well, the second part of verse 5 here talks about when you take that plank out of your eye, then you can see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. You see, some folks want to jump to the conclusion that we should never judge anyone at all. That's not true. That's not what the Bible is teaching here. That's certainly not what Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians 5:12. You see, Christians are to rightly and lovingly judge one another. The Bible calls that accountability. You and I, we all need this as Christians. If we can lovingly approach each other with biblical truth and hold each other accountable. Hey, thanks again for joining us for Q&A. Remember, you can submit your own question anonymously by texting that number on your screen.